Arlen Voss moved slowly, his boots crunching on the frozen dirt of the border zone. The wind howled through the broken towers and twisted metal that marked the edge of human space. Beyond this line lay dragon territory, a place humans were warned never to enter. Yet here he was, carrying something small and fragile wrapped in his coat. The hatchling stirred weakly, making soft, pitiful sounds that made Arlen's chest tighten. Its skin was still wet with illness, and its tiny wings trembled like paper in the wind. He had no idea how it had come to be here or why it had survived long enough for him to find it. All he knew was that it needed him, and he would not leave it to die. Every step forward was heavy with fear. Stories of dragons attacking trespassers filled human villages, and many travelers never returned from these lands. Arlen knew he might not survive this journey. He felt the hatchling's small heart beating against his chest, slower than it should. It was so small and fragile that it seemed impossible it could ever grow into a full dragon. But he also felt a strange warmth, a faint spark of life, that told him it still wanted to fight. The wind carried a low rumble, a sound that made the hairs on Arlen's neck stand on end. He paused and looked around. There was no dragon in sight, yet the world felt alive in a way humans rarely noticed. The air shimmered with heat from distant dragon lairs, and he sensed movement in the shadows, like eyes watching him. He tightened his grip on the coat around the hatchling. "Don't worry," he whispered, his voice almost lost to the wind. "I'll keep you safe." A sudden sound broke the stillness, a soft step on broken metal. Arlen froze. He turned slowly, his heart pounding. There was a figure walking beside him, almost silently, blending with the shadows. It was a tall figure, dressed in plain armor that reflected the dim sunlight. Its face was hidden beneath a hood. Arlen instinctively stepped closer to shield the hatchling. He did not recognize the figure as human, yet it did not attack. "You shouldn't be here," a calm voice said. It was low, measured, and strange in its smoothness. Arlen's eyes widened. I found it," he stammered, pointing to the hatchling. "I couldn't leave it behind. It would have died." The figure did not reply immediately. Instead, it watched him carefully, measuring his words and actions. Arlen could feel its eyes on him, piercing through the thin layers of his coat, through the small bundle he carried, as if it could see every fear and hope he held inside. He realized with a shiver that he did not know who this traveler was. Was it another human? A dragon in disguise? He swallowed hard, trying to steady his racing heart. "I've seen humans do strange things," the figure said finally, almost softly, "but risking your life for one of ours, that is unusual." Arlen blinked. "Yours? I didn't know," his voice trailed off. He had not intended to speak aloud, not to anyone. He felt suddenly exposed, as if some unseen force had laid bare his intentions. All he had wanted was to help the hatchling, not to draw attention or make enemies. The figure stepped closer, careful not to touch the bundle in his coat. "Do you know what you are carrying?" it asked, voice calm but edged with curiosity. "Most humans would leave it to die. Most would run." I didn't have a choice," Arlen said, tightening his arms. "It was alive. I couldn't just leave it." His words were simple, but they carried a weight he could feel in his chest. He had lost people before, humans he cared for, and he refused to fail another living being, even if it was not human. For a moment, the wind blew so fiercely that it seemed the world itself might tear him apart. The hatchling shivered in his coat, and he wrapped it tighter against him. He could feel its warmth slowly returning, faint but real. The figure beside him did not move away, did not attack. It simply walked, step for step, as if studying him. Arlen glanced up at the figure. Even with the hood, he could sense power, calm and steady. There was something different about this traveler. Something that made him realize that he might not just be walking beside a stranger, he could be walking beside a being capable of ending his life in a heartbeat. And yet, it did not. It was patient. It waited. It observed. They moved together in silence, the frozen landscape stretching endlessly in all directions. Arlen could see the jagged peaks of dragon nests in the distance, black shapes against the pale sky. The hatchling whimpered softly, and he stopped to give it a sip of water from his canteen. He held the tiny head gently, and the creature looked up at him with small, trusting eyes. A strange connection passed between them, a bond of life that neither could fully explain. "You are strong for one so small," the figure said quietly. "Perhaps stronger than you know." Arlen shook his head. I'm just trying to help." He did not understand the feeling rising in him, a mixture of fear and hope, but he could not stop. He had never carried anything so important before, never risked his life so openly. And yet, he felt a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in a long while, he felt that his actions mattered. The path ahead twisted and fell into shadow. Broken walls, fallen towers, and charred ground marked the land like scars. Arlen walked carefully, keeping the hatchling close. He could hear faint sounds, distant roars that reminded him that dragons were everywhere. Yet he also felt something else, a presence walking beside him, quiet, controlled, watching. He did not know it then, but the figure was the Dragon Queen herself, testing him, learning if humans were capable of more than fear and violence. Arlen continued, step by step, unaware of the eyes following his every move. He only knew the small warmth pressed to his chest, the life he had chosen to protect. And in that frozen, dangerous land between worlds, he understood one thing: survival was not enough. Sometimes, to survive, you had to care when no one was watching. And so, he walked, the hatchling trembling in his arms, and the shadow of the queen walking silently beside him, waiting to see what this human would do next. Arlen walked carefully, each step heavier than the last. The wind cut through his coat, but he kept the hatchling wrapped tightly against his chest. Its small body shivered in pain, and Arlen could feel the tiny ribs rising and falling unevenly. He wished he knew more about dragons. Every story he had heard from the villagers said dragons were strong, fierce, and untouchable. They did not need humans, and humans could not help them. Yet here was a living, breathing dragon child depending entirely on him. He stopped for a moment and took out a small canteen of water. The hatchling whimpered as he offered it to him, and Arlen poured a few drops into its mouth. It drank slowly, its tongue flicking at the water like a tiny flame. Arlen's hands were rough and human, not made for delicate work. He worried constantly that he might hurt the hatchling instead of helping it. Still, he kept going, using everything he knew: warmth, gentle touches, soft words, and patience. The figure beside him, silent and watchful, made him uneasy. He had not spoken more than a few words since the border. He did not know if it was human or dragon, friend or enemy. He felt the eyes on him, steady and unblinking, observing every move. And yet, when the hatchling shifted or gasped, the figure did not intervene. It allowed him to struggle, to show that his care was real and not forced. Night fell, bringing cold shadows and the faint glow of distant dragon fires. Arlen wrapped the hatchling in more layers of cloth, pressing it to his chest. He whispered quietly to it, words of comfort he barely understood himself. "You're safe. I won't let anything happen to you, just hold on." The hatchling's wings twitched slightly as if trying to respond, and for a moment, Arlen felt hope. It was tiny, fragile hope, but hope nonetheless. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying the distant sound of flapping wings. Arlen froze. He glanced around, his heart hammering in his chest. The queen, still walking silently beside him, said nothing, but he could feel her presence tense. He knew dragons could appear from anywhere, and a single misstep could mean death for him and the hatchling. He pressed himself closer to the shadows of broken walls and rocks, moving carefully. Hours passed in slow, careful steps. Arlen offered the hatchling small sips of water, whispered words, and his warmth. He checked for any injuries, feeling the tiny heart beating faintly, trying to keep it alive. The hatchling coughed weakly once, and Arlen's stomach tightened. He wanted to cry, to scream, to beg the dragons in the distance to leave him alone. But he forced himself to keep moving, one step at a time, refusing to give up. At one point, the hatchling's small eyes fluttered open, looking at him with a mix of confusion and trust. Arlen smiled despite the fear. "You're stronger than I thought," he said softly. "You can make it. I know you can." He felt a strange warmth in his chest, not just for the hatchling, but for the act of caring itself. He realized that this small life depended on more than just food or water. It depended on human courage, on willingness to risk everything for someone else. The shadowed figure beside him shifted slightly, a silent reminder that someone, or something, was always watching. Arlen wondered why it had not stopped him, why it had allowed him to struggle. He suspected now that the figure was not ordinary, that its presence was meant to test him, to see what humans were capable of when no one demanded anything in return. They reached a narrow ravine, and Arlen had to step carefully over loose rocks. He stumbled once, and the hatchling whimpered in fright. He froze, holding it tightly to his chest until he regained balance. It's okay," he whispered. The hatchling's small wings trembled against him, but it clung to him, tiny claws gripping his coat. For Arlen, the fear of failing was stronger than the fear of dragons outside. At dawn, the temperature dropped even more. The hatchling was weaker now, and Arlen felt panic rise inside him. He knew he had to do something more. He dug out a small blanket from his pack and wrapped it carefully around the hatchling. He pressed his own body against it, letting his heat pass through layers of cloth. "Hold on," he said again, his voice almost breaking. "You have to hold on. You can survive this. I know you can." The queen's presence beside him remained silent but intense. Arlen did not know who she was or why she walked with him, yet he felt her attention like a heavy weight, measuring every action, every choice. He did not try to speak to her. He focused entirely on the hatchling, hoping his care was enough to make a difference. The day grew longer, and the shadows stretched. Arlen kept moving, stopping occasionally to check the hatchling. It made small noises, weak squeaks that told him it was still alive. He felt pride mixed with fear. Pride because he was helping something so fragile, and fear because one wrong step could destroy it all. Every breath, every heartbeat, felt precious. By late afternoon, the hatchling stirred more strongly. Arlen felt a spark of hope, the first real sign that his care was working. He smiled, exhausted but relieved. "See? I told you," he whispered. "You can make it. You have to make it." The hatchling looked up at him, eyes brightening slightly, and pressed its tiny head against his chest. The queen remained beside him, her presence calm but powerful. Arlen did not know her intentions, but he began to understand something about dragons. Strength was not just in claws or fire. Strength could be patience, courage, and care. Even the smallest human could show it, even in the most dangerous place. As night fell again, Arlen found a small cave to rest. He made a soft nest from his blankets and pressed the hatchling close. "Sleep now," he murmured. "I'll stay with you. No one can take you from me." He felt the weight of the long day in his bones, but he could not rest fully. Outside, the wind carried distant roars and the echo of wings, a reminder that danger was never far. Yet he felt something else too, a quiet sense of connection, between himself and the fragile life he carried, and between himself and the unseen watcher who had chosen to follow him. For the first time, he realized that survival alone was not enough. To survive, he had to care, to risk, and to persist when no one else would. And in this frozen, dangerous land, he held the tiny life close, willing to face whatever came, step by step, breath by breath, for the sake of one small dragon. The hatchling stirred weakly in Arlen's arms, its small body shaking with every breath. Its eyes half closed, it seemed to struggle just to survive. Arlen's heart clenched. He had carried it for days, keeping it warm, giving it water, whispering words of encouragement. But now, no matter what he did, it grew weaker with every step. He knew he could not keep moving like this. The hatchling needed real help, or it would die before they reached any safe place. Ahead, partially hidden among broken walls and shattered buildings, Arlen spotted a small structure, an old human medical shelter abandoned during a past border war. Its walls were cracked, the windows dusty, but it was solid enough to provide shelter from the wind and cold. He carefully laid the hatchling down on a pile of blankets he carried and gently wrapped it. Its breathing was shallow, almost invisible, and he felt panic rising inside him. He glanced at the shadow beside him. The figure had been walking silently for days, observing him without interference. Now, it leaned closer, its presence calm but sharp, watching his every move. Arlen did not know who it was. He had no idea whether it was a dragon or a human in disguise, but somehow he felt its judgment. He swallowed hard, gripping the hatchling a little tighter. I just wanted to live," he said softly, almost to himself. Inside the shelter, he set the hatchling on a makeshift bed of blankets and examined it carefully. Its scales were pale, its small wings trembling. Arlen felt helpless. He had been trained as a civilian medic during the border war, but most of what he knew was meant for humans. He had no idea how to treat a dragon, especially one this small and sick. Memories of his past haunted him, the patients he could not save, the screams he had tried to silence, the hands that slipped from his own too soon. The guilt still weighed heavily on him, heavier than any armor or weapon. I failed so many before," he whispered, his voice low. "I won't fail you." He tried to calm himself, forcing the panic down so he could think clearly. He wrapped the hatchling gently in layers of cloth, trying to retain its body heat. He gave it small sips of water and murmured words of comfort. "Stay with me. Please stay with me," he said, stroking its tiny head. The hatchling's weak movements reassured him a little. It was still fighting, and that gave him hope. The shadow beside him shifted slightly. Arlen looked up, startled. The figure knelt silently, observing his care. For the first time, Arlen realized that it was not interfering. It did not heal, did not scold, did not threaten. It was watching, waiting. He wondered why, but there was no time to question it. He focused on the hatchling, using every ounce of patience and knowledge he had. He moved quickly, using simple methods: warmth, water, gentle touches, and steady words. He used his body to share heat with the hatchling and kept a constant watch. He cleaned its small wounds, soothed its shivers, and whispered encouragement. All the while, he was haunted by his past failures, memories of patients who had died in his arms, and families whose eyes had pleaded for something he could not give. He did not want this little life to end the same way. The hatchling groaned softly, its small wings trembling. Arlen held it close, whispering reassurance. "I won't let you die," he said. "I promise. You'll make it. I know you will." He worked with care and urgency, checking for signs of improvement. Its breathing remained faint, and he realized he needed something more, but he had nothing. Only his hands, his warmth, and his resolve. Time passed slowly. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the ruined shelter. Arlen kept talking, telling the hatchling about small things, a sky he had seen, a story from his past, even the food he hoped it would eat one day. He tried to make it feel safe, to make it believe it could survive. Every sound it made, every tiny movement, felt like a victory. At one point, the hatchling's eyes fluttered open briefly. Arlen's heart jumped. He smiled despite exhaustion. "You're still here," he whispered, "still fighting. That's good. That's very good." Its weak gaze met his, and he felt a strange connection, deeper than anything he had known. He realized that life was fragile, but also strong, and that sometimes the smallest spark could survive even in the darkest place. The shadow beside him remained still, almost invisible, but Arlen felt its presence like a steady heartbeat. He wondered why it did not act, why it did not intervene with magic or power. He realized slowly that perhaps it was meant to teach him, to see if humans could show care and courage beyond fear. He had no words for this, only action, warmth, water, patience, and attention. Night fell fully, and the wind blew cold through the broken walls. Arlen built a small shelter inside the shelter, piling blankets to form a soft nest. He held the hatchling close, feeling its tiny body against his own. "Sleep now," he whispered. "I'll stay here. Nothing will hurt you while I'm here." He was exhausted, but he could not rest. He stayed alert, listening for any sound outside, ready to protect the hatchling with everything he had. Hours passed. The hatchling's breathing remained faint, but steady enough that Arlen allowed himself a small sigh of relief. He stroked its head gently, whispering words of hope. "You can do this," he said. "You're stronger than you know." Even with the cold, the wind, and the danger outside, he felt something lift inside him, a small sense of purpose he had not felt in years. The shadow moved slightly, kneeling closer to watch. Arlen noticed its faint glow in the moonlight, a subtle sign of its power. He did not understand it, and he did not question it. He focused on what he could do. He fed the hatchling water, kept it warm, and whispered to it throughout the night. He learned slowly that survival was more than food or shelter, it was care, patience, and courage when nothing seemed to help. By dawn, the hatchling's breathing had strengthened just enough that Arlen felt a flicker of hope. He realized that even in the worst moments, small acts of care could make a difference. He had risked everything for this small life, and it was showing him that courage was not just about fighting, it was about holding on, even when the world was against you. He looked toward the shadow beside him, realizing that he was not alone in his efforts. Whatever it was, human or dragon, he felt that it recognized his courage. Perhaps, he thought, even dragons could see the value in human care. And in that quiet, abandoned shelter, amidst broken walls and cold winds, a fragile dragon hatchling began to survive because one human refused to give up, even in the face of fear, failure, and death. Arlen felt his heart pound as they reached the border of dragon territory. The landscape changed abruptly, jagged rocks rose like teeth from the ground, and the air smelled sharp and metallic. Smoke drifted in the wind from distant dragon nests. Here, he knew, humans were forbidden, and trespassers rarely lived to tell the tale. The hatchling in his arms whimpered softly, its body still weak, but alive. Ahead, a line of dragon guards appeared. They were massive, armored in scales, carrying long weapons that gleamed in the dim light. Their eyes were sharp, unblinking, fixed on him. Arlen stopped, his chest tightening. He had reached the point of no return. If he tried to go any further, both he and the hatchling would be destroyed. He set the hatchling down gently on a blanket at the edge of the clearing. It curled into itself, shivering. Arlen knelt beside it, feeling the weight of every choice he had made. He could turn back and possibly survive, but the hatchling would be left in danger. And he could not do that. The dragon guard stepped forward, their long claws scraping against stone. Arlen raised his hands, trying to show he meant no harm. "I'm human," he said clearly, his voice steady despite the fear. "I came here only to protect this hatchling. I will not harm any of you. Please, spare it." A tall dragon guard, larger than the rest, stepped forward. Its eyes glowed faintly in the evening light. "You are trespassing," it said in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "You carry one of ours into human lands. Why should we let you leave?" Arlen swallowed hard. "Because it is sick," he said. "It is weak. I found it alone and in danger. I only want it to live. If I die here, it will still survive because of your mercy. I offer myself instead. Take me if you must, but spare it." The guards exchanged glances. They had been trained to expect fear, greed, or lies from humans. But Arlen spoke with honesty and courage. There was no plea for reward, no begging for life beyond the simple hope of saving another. That was unusual. One of the guards tilted its head, studying him. "You are willing to die for a hatchling?" it asked, almost in disbelief. Arlen nodded. "Yes. Its life matters more than mine. I cannot let it die. I have failed so many before. I will not fail this one." His voice shook slightly, but he did not look away. A sudden hush fell over the group. The air felt heavy, charged with power. Arlen did not know it, but the figure who had been walking silently beside him all this time stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, it shed its hood and revealed itself. A golden glow radiated from it, and Arlen froze. Standing before him, taller and more magnificent than he could have imagined, was the Dragon Queen herself, Serelith. Her wings spread wide, glowing faintly in the dying light. Arlen's eyes widened in shock. "Why you?" he stammered. "All this time, you were—" "Yes," the Queen said calmly, her voice like soft thunder. "I have walked beside you to see if humans are capable of true care. And now I see that you are." Her gaze softened slightly, but it was still powerful, commanding. "You risked your life to protect one of mine. That is not common among your kind." Arlen felt his knees weaken. He had imagined dragons as terrifying, cruel, unstoppable. Yet here was the Queen herself, witnessing his courage, not punishing him, but observing and judging him. His chest swelled with a mixture of fear and awe. The guards around them lowered their weapons slowly, glancing at their queen. Arlen realized that his offer of sacrifice, his honesty, and his care for the hatchling had earned her respect. He still trembled, unsure if he would be spared, but he felt a faint hope. Serelith knelt beside the hatchling and examined it. Her eyes softened further. "This one is weak, yes," she said. "But you have done what we dragons cannot teach. You have cared, patiently, without force or fear. You have risked everything for life." Arlen looked down, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief. "I just wanted it to live," he whispered. "I could not leave it behind." The Queen nodded. "That is human strength," she said quietly. "Not strength of fire or claws, but strength of heart. It is rare, but powerful." She reached out and gently lifted the hatchling, holding it close. Its small body stirred, and Arlen felt a rush of emotion he could not name. The hatchling's life was safe, because of him. The Queen turned her gaze to the guards. "Let him go," she commanded. "He has proven himself worthy of trust. No harm will come to him." The guards stepped back immediately, bowing their heads in respect and obedience. Arlen staggered back, overwhelmed. His body was weak from days of travel, fear, and constant vigilance. But he felt a quiet pride. He had survived the Forbidden Lands, protected the hatchling, and earned the respect of the Dragon Queen herself. For the first time, he realized that courage and compassion could matter more than strength or weapons. The Queen handed the hatchling back to him for a moment. It nestled into his arms, small and warm. "Take care of it until it is strong enough to return to us," she said. "I trust you will." Arlen nodded, tears in his eyes. "I will. I promise." The Queen's wings stretched wide, and she looked down at him once more. "Humans are capable of great courage," she said. "Remember that. Do not doubt yourselves. Your choices matter." With a powerful beat of her wings, she lifted into the sky, her presence radiating strength and grace. Arlen watched her rise, the guards dispersing behind her. He felt the weight of what had happened, the danger, the fear, the risk, and the truth of what he had done. He had walked through death and fire to protect one life, and it had mattered. As night fell fully over the jagged rocks and distant fires, Arlen sat down beside the hatchling. Its tiny body stirred in his arms, and he whispered softly, "You're safe now. We made it." He felt the warmth of its life, the steady beat of its small heart, and a deep sense of purpose filled him. He knew the journey was far from over. The hatchling still needed care, and the border was still dangerous. But he had learned something precious: courage and compassion could change the world, even in places where strength alone ruled. And for the first time, he truly believed that humans could earn the respect of dragons, not through war, but through mercy, care, and selfless courage. And in that quiet moment, with the hatchling safe and the dragon queen watching from above, Arlen realized that his life, and the life of the small dragon, were connected in ways neither of them fully understood. The sun was low on the horizon when the dragon queen, Serelith, finally returned the hatchling to its nest. High on the jagged cliffs, the nest was made of blackened stone and twisted roots, lined with soft moss that glowed faintly in the evening light. Other dragons, smaller but strong, gathered around, watching curiously as the queen set the small creature down. The hatchling had grown stronger under Arlen's care. Its scales were brighter, its wings stronger, and its eyes sparkled with life. It stirred and chirped, curling into the warmth of its nest as the queen gently stepped back. Arlen stood at the edge of the cliff, watching silently. He had followed the queen this far, carrying the hatchling through danger, cold, and fear. Now it was safe. He felt a deep, quiet relief wash over him, but it was mixed with a strange emptiness. He had done all of this for life, for courage, for care, but he had no reward, no medal, no riches. Only the knowledge that he had saved a life, and that this life mattered. Serelith turned to him, her golden eyes soft yet commanding. "You have done more than many humans could even imagine," she said. "You risked your life for one of ours. That is strength in its truest form." She stepped closer, and Arlen instinctively bowed slightly, unsure what else to do. He felt a mixture of awe and humility. "You may return home," she said. "We will not harm you. Your journey ends here." Her voice was calm, yet it carried weight, as if the entire cliff and sky itself had listened. The dragon guards bowed their heads, showing respect, and the smaller dragons shifted quietly in their nests. Arlen felt the tension drain from his body. He had survived the Forbidden Lands, faced death, and been judged by the Dragon Queen herself. And he had passed. The hatchling chirped again and looked at Arlen briefly before curling back into its mother's warmth. Arlen smiled faintly, feeling an unspoken bond between them. It was a connection forged through struggle and care, one that neither time nor distance could erase. He realized that life was precious not for its power, wealth, or victories, but for the courage to protect it, even when the world tried to destroy it. Serelith's gaze softened further. "Humans have a quality many dragons lack," she said. "You care when no one watches. You risk when there is nothing to gain. That is the lesson your kind must remember." Arlen nodded quietly. He could not fully understand the depth of her words, but he felt their truth in his chest. He had lived it every step of the way. Slowly, Arlen turned to leave, guided by the dragon guards. They escorted him down the cliffs and through the dangerous lands of dragon territory. He walked carefully, still feeling the weight of responsibility, still feeling the small, steady pulse of life that had grown strong because of him. Each step reminded him of the hatchling, of the queen, and of the choice he had made, to act, to care, to persist. As the sun disappeared behind distant mountains, the landscape shifted back into human territory. The air smelled different here, less sharp, less tense, but still heavy with memories of danger. Arlen breathed deeply, feeling a quiet peace settle in his chest. It was a peace he had not known in years, not since the border war had taken so many lives around him. It was not the peace of victory or wealth, it was the peace of knowing he had done something right, something meaningful, something that mattered. He remembered the small moments along the journey, the hatchling's weak chirps, the warmth he shared, the endless cold nights, and the silent presence of the queen watching. Each step had been hard, but each step had been worth it. He realized that courage was not measured by survival alone, but by the willingness to act when no one demanded it. By the time he reached a small human outpost, night had fallen fully. The lights of distant homes twinkled faintly, welcoming him back without judgment or questions. The guards left him at the border, bowing their heads in respect. Arlen nodded in return, unsure if they fully understood what he had endured, but sensing that they did not need to. The story of his journey would remain with him, not with fame or reward, but in the quiet moments of memory and reflection. He walked through the streets of the small settlement slowly, clutching his coat and feeling the weight of exhaustion in every bone. The villagers had long since gone to sleep, leaving only the soft hum of the night. Arlen paused on a small hill overlooking the settlement, looking at the stars scattered across the sky. Somewhere out there, the queen and the hatchling thrived. Somewhere out there, life continued because he had acted when it mattered most. Arlen sat quietly, letting the night calm his mind. He did not need words, applause, or recognition. He only needed the quiet knowledge that he had done what was right. In his chest, he carried a sense of purpose, a feeling that he had earned something more valuable than anything else, the understanding that courage and care were stronger than fear and power. In the distance, faint roars echoed across the mountains. Arlen smiled softly, thinking of the hatchling now healthy in its nest. He knew that life would continue, stronger and brighter because of his small acts of bravery. And he knew that humans, despite their flaws, could show a kind of strength that even dragons respected, a strength not of fire or claws, but of heart. He walked slowly toward his small home, feeling the weight of his journey lift with every step. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. The fear, the tension, and the uncertainty of the past days melted into quiet satisfaction. He had no riches, no recognition, no reward, but he had something far greater, the knowledge that one human could make a difference, that one life could be saved, and that courage and care could change the world, even in the darkest places. That night, Arlen slept deeply, the stars above shining faintly through his window. He dreamed not of battles or fear, but of life, small and fragile, yet unbroken. Somewhere far away, the Dragon Queen and her hatchling watched the skies together. And somewhere in his heart, Arlen knew that humanity had earned a quiet, enduring respect, not through war, not through fire, but through courage, compassion, and the simple act of caring when it mattered most.